So moving on, we're going to take a look at TV/movie video games in the modern day. And the reason I say modern day is because growing up, there was always the stigma behind a movie or TV-based game. That they were making it to cash in on something that was popular, that people would pick it up. I think nothing speaks better than 50 Cent's Get Rich or Die Trying. He made the movie, he made the video game to come out right next to it. It was one of the worst games of all time, and yet it still sold huge amounts of money. And I think we're getting to the point now where there's been a shift, right? You're still laughing about
he goes to Iraq in that game.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, that's a great example.
He was a soldier.
Yeah, he was a soldier, that's right.
You know? I mean, even some of the old Superman game that came out on N64, which is borderline unplayable.
Even go farther back, there was the Lion King game on Sega Genesis that, from what I understand, is one of the hardest games ever made. And not because it's intentionally hard, just because it's so shit that it's one of the most difficult games.
I think the most infamous shitty movie game of all time was E.T.
Yes.
Which, for the Atari, which ended up buried underground, just in the desert, because there were so many unsold copies of the game. It was bugged when it came out. You couldn't get past the second level. They made the game because it was popular at the time, and they pushed it out. And there's so many games that followed that kind of idea for decades.
Agreed. And I will say this, on the other side, there have been a lot of horrible movies that have been based off extremely popular or successful video games.
Final Fantasy.
Spirited Away. Resident Evil. Resident Evil is fairly successful. I didn't hate the original Resident Evil movie, but it's not great.
Right.
And I haven't watched it in a long time, so I can't tell you guys whether it's still good, if it holds up, but I assume it doesn't. Blood Rain.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot.
There was a lot that they tried to do, and either the movie based on the game failed, or the game based on the movie failed, or the TV show, or whatever. I think the people that do it right, honestly, nowadays, are the Lego games.
I think that the Lego games are
They're
one
fun.
of the most successful adaptation series that there is out there at all.
And at this point, if you buy one of those games, you know what you're going to get.
You know what you're going to get. You know what you know. They're a little, I think for adults, they're a little bit of a guilty pleasure.
Right.
I think for kids, they're a really fun game. And they're normally pretty well made. They've got, they just take you through the story generally, but they normally have a ton of stuff.
Right.
And every beloved character, they're normally pretty good. I agree with you 100% on that. But what brought us to this conversation
was the announcement of
a new Narcos video game. And if you're not familiar with Narcos, it's a very popular, I highly recommend it myself, Netflix television show. If you're okay with reading subtitles, I recommend it. If you don't like reading subtitles, don't bother.
That's why we haven't watched it. It's because that's a show I would try to sit down and watch with Allison, and then she can't do that. She can't
read.
Well, she can read. Rude.
No, I don't.
She misses out on everything happening on screen because she's sitting there trying to follow along with the words going up.
Right. No,
it's like singing karaoke. Do you actually watch the video that goes along with the karaoke that you're singing?
Right.
No. You're reading the words.
I get that. No, I get that. I think, again, personally, I really, really enjoyed the show. It's a great show. But I can understand if you're not a subtitle person,
right?
Don't bother. Literally more than half. I would say over half of the show is in Spanish. So if you speak Spanish, good. It's good practice.
Boom.
It's good practice.
Yeah.
Or if or just a native Spanish speaker,
get on Duolingo on your phone. Sponsor us. And then practice it out watching some Narcos.
Maybe Netflix will sponsor us for pimping out their show. They're making a game.
Yeah.
It's from Kuju Entertainment,
which is the sister company of Curve Digital.
Right. And if you're not familiar, Bo will tell you all about.
Which one? Am I talking about Curve or am I talking about Kuju? Curve's not bad. They put out some really interesting and kind of innovative indie games a lot of the stuff that they've put out as a parent company are things like Human Fall Flat, which is very widely received by a lot of people as something that is very enjoyable. It's not terrible. There's Serial Cleaner, which was reviewed very well. A Flame in the Flood. Again, these are all indie titles that did pretty well. Dear Esther. But
we're well reviewed. We're well, accepted.
Right.
But
I was like, okay, that's cool. Curve Digital. And then I clicked over to Kuju, and then I looked at the games that they've actually created. The most notable of these is Guitar Hero Live, which is
Guitar Hero game.
Right, it's Guitar Hero. Honestly, as a company, you don't have to put a lot of development energy into it. You just kind of have to come up with your UI, your UX, and then you just put some video behind it. And that game was a lot like just music videos. So it was very little like development work that had to go into it besides just programming the MIDI that goes with the music itself.
And I mean, it wasn't the most original. It's a Guitar Hero game.
Right. It's the only one they've made.
It's got a new button set.
Yeah.
I have the Guitar Hero Live guitar right back there, actually.
Yeah. So it's a little different.
It's a little bit different, but I mean, the reality is, it's still a Guitar Hero game. And like you said, it wasn't like they had even like a lot of little characters and stuff, so it wasn't like it was a ton of animation.
You didn't have your like little band on the screen.
Right. So they also made Pokemon Art Academy.
I don't really know anything about that besides that it was a DS game and you try to draw Pokemon. They like teach you how to draw Pikachu.
Yeah.
So again, not a whole lot of development energy there.
They made a Rabbids game.
And I guess the busiest game they made was Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2.
Yeah, and that I remember that game fondly, personally. It's a Marvel Ultimate Alliance game. But I would say that was one of their bigger titles that they've released.
Right. So a lot of what they've done is like either handhelds or Guitar Hero, Zumba Fitness, or...
Yeah, so basically, like you said, handhelds or remaking or like revamping an old genre game.
Right. They haven't taken an original idea and really pushed it out. Now, like, yes, they did work on Marvel Ultimate Alliance, but I don't know what all they did on Ultimate Alliance. Because from what I understand, they didn't do the whole game. Right? Like, somebody else actually...
Activision published it, for one thing. And I think that there was another development team.
Vicarious Vision, Savage Entertainment, and InSpace. So I want to say Vicarious Vision was responsible for the engine, which is the bulk of that work. And like even when you Wikipedia, they don't show up on the developer's
So the
page.
most likely thing we'd have to look into it more. But Kuju most likely just developed a part of the game. So they developed a certain thing within Marvel Alliance 2. The point is this company is not really known for putting out huge games or anything like that. I'm a little bit I'm tentatively optimistic about it personally because I think this is an opportunity for Kuju to really get behind something, put in a ton of effort, and really go for it with this Narcos game. It is described on their website as an action game, or on the Curve Digital website as an action game. So I presume that it will be a full fleshed out actual game that you get to play.
Right.
The question I have: will it be? I'm a little bit worried that it's just gonna be a mobile game, to be honest, but.
Yeah.
Will it be a Mafia style game, or I really don't know what else they're gonna go with it.
From what they've said, is that they want to reflect the gritty action and the deep storytelling that is prevalent throughout the Netflix series. So that's where I get skeptical here. I don't think they're going to deliver on this hope that they have to sell you that kind of like drug lord, cocaine trafficking, gritty action, which is why no one made a Breaking Bad game, right? It's like, how do you really do that?
Not only that, it's also, they just have no experience. Right. Either of them, Kuju or Curve, of doing anything like
this scale.
What I would imagine this game needs to be successful. I mean,
which again would be something like GTA or Mafia, right? Where you're kind of playing this role. I mean, if there aren't side missions where you deal cocaine out to people,
what's the point?
You're missing out on blatantly obvious, like,
why'd you make this game?
Right. I mean, even if it's something that's a little more linear, like LA Noire, I feel like that would be cool, but still, you need to be able to give people this, like, free reign to kind of explore a world. And if it's too, linear, if it's too, like, follow this path, you have to do this, this is the story, and that's all you get to do is just go in and do the story, I think you're going to flop. Yeah. But I guess we'll see.
But this is just one piece of the larger story that we want to talk about. This is what spurred us into it. But the story we're really trying to get at is, are games adapted from other media actually really a good thing now? At the beginning of this conversation, we talked about all these horrible examples of it. But the reality is, we've seen some really good games come out of other media.
Right. Which I guess, like, I'm really iffy to say Tomb Raider. Because,
well, Tomb Raider is another example of Tomb Raider is one of the few examples where it goes both ways.
Right. Because if you look at the old school PlayStation, like early PlayStation Tomb Raiders, and then you look at the movies, they're very different.
Right.
I mean, the movies weren't terrible based off of the game. They weren't great.
No, they weren't great. I mean,
but they weren't terrible.
No, but
you kind of had that James Bond kind of feel to it with, Angelina Jolie.
Right.
But
I will say this is one thing I appreciate about the original Tomb Raider movies, and I think they did get a little bit, is that they're kind of goofy in a good way, where they're like purposely trying to have sort of video game mechanics. Angelina Jolie is incredibly attractive in the Tomb Raider movies. Right. It's 2000, it's like early 2000s. Angelina Jolie. I don't know if.
Yeah.
Anyway,
she married Brad Pitt back then, right? Like, hey.
I mean, she was. Anyways,
saucy lady.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But the point I'm trying to make is that the new Tomb Raider movie is trying to emulate the new Tomb Raider games.
Right.
A little bit grittier, a little bit darker, a little bit more realistic, a little bit less of like a playground.
And it even kind of parallels that same storyline, from what I understand. It's like they're both very well connected. Right. But looking at the latest, I guess the only one I played was Tomb Raider, right? The new Tomb Raider, which is the first one of the new trilogy. When I was playing that, I said to myself, this feels like they based it off of the movie, with a new story, a new introduction to how Lara became Lara, but it still kind of felt like that Tomb Raider 2000s movie and how they kind of went through the story of it. Like, here you are, you are kind of abandoned on a, like, lost island. You're separated from all your team, and then you're kind of just fighting through some bad guys trying to piece everything back together. But it definitely had that very cinematic kind of feel to it, and I kind of see how they took the old Tomb Raider games, they made it a movie, and then that movie helped inspire what they did with the new Square Enix Tomb Raider.
Yeah, so I think Tomb Raider, I would say, is one of the best examples, as sad as this is, in some ways, it's one of the best examples of game to movie, and then
to game.
It's probably the only example I can think that's game to movie to game, where they actually had influence on each other.
I got one more for you, which is a free PlayStation game this month, Ratchet and Clank.
True, they did do... Well, okay, but that's a direct.
Yeah.
That's as direct as it gets.
Yeah, that went game, movie, game. And they make fun of it. Like, several times, there's a lot of little, like, they poke fun at the fact that they
game is based off the movie. Like, that's what's so funny about it, right?
That being said, I love the new Ratchet and Clank. I'm not going to sit here and bash that game because I've been really enjoying it. I dabbled in it a little last week.
No,
it's been fun.
That's what makes Ratchet and Clank almost one of the perfect people to do that because it's already tongue in cheek from the beginning. So that it was so true. And I thought you were going to say Resident Evil, and I was like, first of all, not a single Resident Evil game is anywhere close to the movies.
Right.
The movies are completely their own garbage universe.
The first one was all right.
From what I remember, it was like... But the first one was also at like the beginning of the zombie craze.
Right.
So when it came out, it was like a relatively fresh zombie movie. So it's like, oh, this is kind of cool. So again, I don't know.
It kind of felt to me like Van Helsing at the time, right?
You're
like
right.
They were, all those dark kind of like people fighting monster zombie things was all happening.
And I mean, of course, Resident Evil, the original Resident Evils have such a cool backstory to them and everything. Yeah. It's like Umbrella Corporation creates this virus, mistakes happen, it gets out, blah, 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 blah.
Apocalypse.
Zombies. Right. I mean, but I think they took the apocalypse part too far.
Right.
And
they didn't give the backstory part enough.
Right.
They should have just paralleled the games. They should have. They didn't.
We don't even. Anyway, Resident Evil, a bad movie series overall. But the point I think we're trying to make...
We did want to at least say that Tomb Raider's got a new trailer out for Shadow of the Tomb Raider.
Right.
It's a teaser. It's very quick, very fast-paced. It looks like the trailer for that looks like a cinematic trailer for a movie.
Yeah.
Like a cinematic teaser trailer. It's very similar to looking at like a teaser for Star Wars.
I can see that.
Yeah, it's very like there's like a lot of black spaces and then like quick imagery.
Right.
And then black space and then quick imagery. And you're like
intense
trying to
music.
Like you have to go and like pause the video just to see what was in the picture, right?
I miss.
So yeah, excited for the new Tomb Raider game. Excited for the new Tomb Raider movie. But let's take a look at some of the other games that have come out that also
are based on other media.
Which I think the most obvious ones we can reach at are the Telltale games, right?
And I think one of the best possible examples of an adaptation or of adaptations,
right?
In my personal opinion, because I think, it's just the fact that Telltale is basically like trying to tell a movie with some interactive elements to it, and I think that for me personally, that's one of the best ways to do it because you don't have to spoil
the
story or a lot of what you would traditionally get in a movie. Just to have some dialogue changes and add some action set pieces that you're involved in.
At least with like the Walking Dead game, like you determine who lives and dies. And, I mean, there's some points where somebody's going to die. You just pick which one it is, and then there's other points where, I mean, spoiler alert, excuse me. I mean, you just kind of have to steer that railroad in the right direction, but. It's still going to come down to this is the track you're on. Point A is going to reach point B. You just pick the tracks that get you there. And I haven't played the Batman one, so I can't speak on that. I know you did. So how is that related to? They do more comic books though.
It's definitely based more. It's based more on comic books, but I would say that still fits into this conversation because personally I think that's like. Right, I wanted to frame this as like multiple how games and other forms of media, so comics, movies, television, and I think it does. I think it does do a pretty good job, but it changes it. Like they create their own stories. They do basically what a movie does to comics. You know, it's like we take elements from it, but we really want to make our own story, which. I think is the way to do it. I think if Walking Dead's the same, right? They created their own story within the Walking Dead universe. And I think if you want to be a successful game, it's way better to do it that way than to go, here's a movie, here's the plot from the movie, how do we turn that plot into a video game? It should be, here's a cool world that was built by this movie, how do we
plug something into it?
Build our own story within that world. I think that's a much better way to do it.
You can even look at like Battlefront 2. Which, I mean, it's been said with Battlefront 2, Star Wars Battlefront 2, that is a part of the now canonical Star Wars universe, but it kind of plugs in some in-between areas, and some things happen. And so it's not really based on the movies, but it fits in with them.
And for me personally, I think even another Star Wars example that does kind of a similar thing, this is non-canon, right. Is Knights of the Old Republic, where you've got this fleshed out Star Wars world with all these really cool elements. You take bits and pieces, and then you build your own story set to 4,000 years in the past.
Right.
And you still get cool lightsaber fights, and spaceship battles, and
aliens with tentacle heads.
Exactly. I mean, you get everything you want.
Get it all. Oh, buddy.
You do get all that, and I think that is a great. I think that's a great thing, and everybody loves KOTOR, obviously.
Right. It's a classic.
Right.
How many games can you play on your PC and your iPad?
Well,
and your Xbox
now, right?
Right.
But that's I think that there's a lot of really good potential there. There's a ton of great potential, but I think that if you're a video game developer and you're listening to this, the best approach isn't to try and remake a movie into a game,
right?
Or even vice versa. I don't think the best approach to making a good movie is to take the game and remake it one for one.
I mean, there are some games that could do it that haven't, that I'm shocked haven't. God of War,
one for one, you mean?
Right,
right.
I'd say perfect, more, not identical. And I wouldn't say the movie would be super great, but you can definitely make a summer blockbuster out of a God of War movie.
What I would like to see, if you were going to do the one for one approach, like taking a game and making it into another form of media, would be a television series. Because a game is too long.
Right.
A game, you're looking at a 40-hour.
Well, that's why I said God of War, right? Because God of War is a lot of just senseless you running around destroying things.
There's only so much story. But I think you could, even God of War, you're still going to lose a lot. Because you still want to have, in a big summer blockbuster, you want to have these. I agree with you. I think God of War is a good choice to do a summer blockbuster of. Because you have crazy action set pieces, and you can go kind of light on the story. But I think they kind of did already try and do God of War with, Gods of Egypt.
Yeah, which I watched
or the Titans
in a hotel
movie.
room. They kept putting it out. It was on, every night while I was staying in this hotel for 3 weeks. And it was absolutely, terrible. Yeah. But that's what I mean. Is that's what I imagine in my head is it would be something like that, but based around, Kratos. There's some, I don't know why they still haven't made, a Metal Gear Solid TV show. Which would be so doable. I don't know if Kojima would ride off on it. But it would be doable. And especially now that he's buddies with Guillermo del Toro, because they were going to reboot Resident Evil. What's the other one? Silent Hill. They were going to
reboot Silent Hill together, yeah.
They were going to reboot Silent Hill together, and I mean, why not? And now you look at some of these games that are almost basically movies, and you're like, why haven't they put it in as a TV show or made it?
But again,
I don't want them to ruin something good.
Right, that's it. That's
I do understand being cautious about it, but something that you can take a good world from and make what looks like it's going to be a good game is the new Spider-Man.
Yes.
Which looks ambitious. And this was a great, Spider-Man 2 was a great example of taking the idea of Spider-Man, taking what we saw in the movies, even didn't they have Tobey Maguire come in and do the voice for Spider-Man 2?
I remember, yeah.
So
they did a great job with that. That was a good game. And I think this new Spider-Man, which is not based in the Tom Holland universe.
Right.
But it's based more on the comics. But to be fair...
But it parallels.
Right. And I think, again... I think that's what the key is that you have this great world. A story's already been told in another movie. You don't need to tell that story again. Mm-hmm. But you can tell a new, fresh, great story with new characters. Well, no, I mean with the same characters, with the same characters, a lot of this, and new added characters, without spoiling what was the old content. You don't need to spoil something
to make something good. Now, I think that the new Spider-Man is a great example of how good gameplay and a free roam environment based in a world, same with KOTOR, can make a game enjoyable. And then you look at stuff like Telltale and how having a more linear path where decisions impact the story that's being told also make games enjoyable. And I think that's the approach that you have to take when you take a movie or a game and you place it into a playable, or take a movie or a TV show and you place it into a playable space. Because people want to be able to do what they want to do, not be forced down a railroad of a movie. Because a lot of what makes movies is how the director visions the script, right? And the camera choices and how they convey the emotion and all of that. And you lose that when you create a playable space. It was a problem with like all of the Harry Potter games that ever came out. And they tried to make those fun by adding in like, oh, well, you can go play Quidditch, or you can do your potions class, or, you know, you kind of got a little bit of this living at Hogwarts kind of feel like from it. That's what they tried to do, but I mean, it was just, all those games were really clunky back in the day, and that's what I'm talking about. I mean, it was EA that put those out, so can we really be surprised? But
no, but you're right. I think that's the whole point, is that you don't want to ruin something that's good, because, like you said, film has its own has so much art in the visuals. It's a visual feast for the eyes. Video games, it's harder to get that same, because you aren't a director. You don't have a director in there showing, like, doing all the best shots, doing all the best cinematography and everything. So you have to rely a lot more on, especially if you're doing a more open world game, you have to rely on having the gameplay be great.
Right.
That's another issue with where's my train of thought? It's gone. Anyways, I had to pause there, so.
Yeah. I feel like that's just the issue that people have when they try to convert subpar movies or just popular movies into games. I think that's why we didn't see a Twilight video game, you know, back in 2007. You know, it's why we didn't see...
Who's going to play Twilight? You know what? There might have been
people probably would have bought a Twilight game.
I think you'd be surprised. There probably was a Twilight.
It was probably like a dating sim though on Steam, you know, and just like a visual novel.
Right.
But it's why we haven't seen a lot of like great movie franchises be converted and transformed into games, because like even with Harry Potter they gave up
good
after
games, yeah.
like Prisoner of Azkaban. There wasn't like another one. And maybe there was a Goblet of Fire. I don't remember. But
I think they're finally starting to learn the lesson of this. You can't just go for the cash grab.
Right. I feel like even stealing an idea is something that happens all the time. I mean, I've been talking about Harry Potter, which brings me to the idea of Spellbound, which is now called something else. But it's made by the people that made Stardew Valley. And they're taking the idea of Hogwarts and they're changing it up into their own little thing. So now you're a wizard at this little wizarding school and you get to go through your daily life very Stardew Valley style, but there's magic, right?
Right.
And so it's different enough so that you can coin it as your own thing, but you don't try to sell it as...
You're not like, here's a Harry Potter game. It's like, here's a cool little wizard school simulator.
Right.
And again, I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think that's the point, is that you're not trying to shoehorn in Harry Potter elements. You're not trying to shoehorn in Harry Potter's story. You're just making a good game.
Yeah.
And I think that's the point, is you can make a good game as long as you don't have to shoehorn in a movie's elements.
Mm-mm. You can take the world of it, and you can place them within it, but people want that kind of availability to do what they want, to live in that world that you've created in the movie. They don't want to play back the movie. They've already seen it. And a lot of times when you try to make an engine that does everything that happens in the movie, you're going to run into brick wall after brick wall in development, and then you're going to push out a game that's just trash.
Exactly.
I mean, even like The Simpsons Road Rage back in the day, like even that was like, yes, okay. Yeah. You're going to give me a GTA-style Simpson game that lets me drive cars and build buildings.
Exactly. Cool. Here's the universe, but the game itself is not really connected to the universe. It's just a fun game.
Right. Exactly. So I think we're now seeing the age where people have learned better, and because of that, games will be better based off of movies.
Yeah, agreed.
I don't know. I can't speak for movies and how they're going to be reacting to popular video games. I think
it's the same issue, though, where movies, when you see, try and make the games too much like the game itself.
Right.
And when reality is, you should just try and tell a story in that world that's really... I mean, I haven't seen the Warcraft movie. I don't know.
But that is a good example of a game based or a movie based in the world of the game, telling a specific story,
a different story than you've already seen. And I think I know the creator of The Last of Us has said, if they make a movie, The Last of Us movie, I don't want it to be the game,
right?
Because he said in his interview, he said,
I've already told the story.
Well, not just that. He was like, I think we've already told the story pretty well.
Yeah.
So I don't need to see it in a movie now. Go play the game.
Right.
And I agree with him. Like, why not? You've built up this really cool, unique, awesome world. It would be cool to see a different story in movie form in that world. You don't need to. I mean, I get that people want to be like, oh, that's my favorite character. Oh, he's on the big screen. But
okay, I'm gonna say leave that to those Facebook video guys that like to make like PUBG IRL videos, you know?
Right. Leave it to
the memes, right? You don't have to make a full-fledged multi-million-dollar movie that's just gonna suck.
Anyway. They're gonna screw it up anyways, so they're gonna screw it up. So
Game devs don't sign off the rights. Just don't do it.
Right.
And then we'll be fine. So I think that's about it for this week. We've got some work going on outside, so we're gonna wrap this up kind of quickly. Feel free to follow us on Twitter at World Game Champs. And make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, and Podbean. Any of those places that you want to get your fix, we are there. Kelvin?
Yeah, I think that's it. Follow us, subscribe, comment, and get back out into the real world, ladies and gentlemen.